My mother threw away the $10,000 birthday gift I gave her and called me utterly useless. Here's what happened. "What is this?" Mom asked, not even reaching out to take the bouquet. "These are specially ordered orchids," I replied softly. "There's something special inside," I added, but she didn't look. Instead, her face flushed with anger, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the armrest of her chair. I knew this was coming. "You really are a useless girl," she snapped, standing up and walking away. "Showing up here in that plain outfit, probably the only decent thing you own, driving some ordinary rented car because you can't afford anything better, and now you're giving me flowers. What am I supposed to do with them? They'll wilt in 3 days." She tossed the bouquet back at me. It landed on the coffee table, petals scattering across the surface. My step-siblings, Nate and Cassie, giggled, covering their mouths with their hands. Some guests looked uncomfortable, while others seemed to enjoy the drama. My stepfather, Victor, just kept scrolling on his phone, as if nothing was happening. I calmly picked up the bouquet, carefully gathering the scattered petals. The room fell silent. Everyone was waiting to see what I'd do next. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let them see my unease. "You know what's funny, Mom?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "Hidden in these flowers." She didn't know anything about them. Their attitude toward me hadn't changed since the old days. They never considered me part of their family. My thoughts drifted back 10 years, to the day that changed my life forever. It was my high school graduation day. I had just taken off my cap and gown when Mom and Victor, my stepfather, called me into the living room for a serious talk. They sat on the couch like judges ready to deliver a verdict, while I stood before them, my heart racing with anticipation. "Alexandra," Victor began, his tone cold and stern, "you're 22 years old. We've been generous, but you need to understand that you can't live here forever. It's time to find a real job and start supporting yourself." I smiled calmly, feeling a wave of relief wash away the tension they seemed to expect. "I understand. I'll move out next week," I replied, savoring the surprise that flickered across their faces. They must have expected protests and tears. Mom opened her mouth as if to say something, but quickly closed it, her perfectly painted lips pressing into a thin line. "Well, good," Victor finally managed. "That's very mature of you." Neither of them asked where I was going or how I'd support myself. They were too thrilled that I'd agreed so easily and didn't want to ask questions that might complicate things. I could almost feel their eagerness to turn my bedroom into yet another space for their precious Cassie. Moving day came faster than I expected. I packed my life into 4 cardboard boxes and 2 suitcases. My fingers trembled slightly as I wrapped each item. It was surprising how little I'd accumulated over the years, as if I'd subconsciously prepared for this moment, waiting for the chance to escape. Grandma Ellie pulled up in her blue Honda at exactly 9 in the morning. I watched from my bedroom window as she parked, my stomach tightening, almost expecting Mom or someone to come out and see what was happening. But the house remained quiet, though I noticed movement behind the curtains in Cassie's room. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home shrink in the side mirror until it disappeared entirely. I didn't cry. On the contrary, with every mile that separated us from that house full of carefully constructed pretenses, I felt lighter, as if chains were falling from my shoulders. I spent the summer working at Sunshine Cafe, serving coffee and sandwiches to regulars who always tipped generously and treated me like family. The warmth of their smiles reminded me of something I'd forgotten could exist. The owner, Mrs. Peterson, even let me take extra shifts when I wanted to save more for college expenses. From then on, my relationship with my parents completely faded. In September, I boarded a plane to start a new life at Westlake University, 3 states away from everything I'd known. Here's my fresh start, I whispered to myself as the plane took off. The real estate and business program was challenging, but I threw myself into it, fueled by determination during every late-night study session. My roommate, Liv, became my first real friend since high school. She didn't know my whole story at first, but when she did, she just hugged me tightly and said, "They're lost, girl. They're total loss." Mom's Instagram became my window into the life I'd left behind. A perfect family. Smiles at Nate's business events, Cassie's gallery opening celebrations, selfies from expensive resorts. My stomach twisted as I saw their rehearsed poses. The captions always sounded like ad slogans. "So proud of our amazing entrepreneurs," or "Nothing beats family time." I was never mentioned, as if I'd never existed, erased from their family history. I spent holidays with Grandma, cooking together and watching classic movies from her collection. The smell of her homemade apple pie filled the house with a warmth no luxury venue could match. We created our own traditions, and they meant more to me than any forced family dinners. Sometimes she'd catch me looking at Mom's social media posts and gently take my phone away, her eyes full of understanding. "Don't torture yourself," she'd say, squeezing my hand. "You're writing your own story, a real one." And I really was. I graduated university with honors, already holding a job offer from Rusho Bainham thanks to internships and academic success. Liv's mentor, Diana Westbrook, ran a prestigious real estate firm and noticed my potential at a university real estate investment expo. "We need ambitious minds like yours," she said during my interview, her gaze sharp and assessing. "Your professors speak highly of your market analyses." I started as a junior agent but had no intention of stopping there. I worked weekends, meticulously built a client network, and obsessively studied market trends. Within 5 years, I became one of the top sales agents and saved enough to put a down payment on my own luxury condo. On the day I signed the mortgage, I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and finally let myself cry. They were tears of joy, pride, and the realization that I'd done it all on my own. Then came the biggest surprise. Diana called me into her office about 6 years after I started at the company. "I've been watching your progress," she said, sliding a folder across the desk. "You consistently outperform everyone. I want to make you a partner in our luxury real estate division." My hands shook as I opened the folder, and I nearly gasped at the commission structure. It was money I couldn't have dreamed of, especially at 28. I never saw the point in flaunting my life online. Sure, I had social media accounts, but I mostly used them for occasional photos of real estate listings or sunsets from my condo balcony. Only Grandma knew about my record-breaking sales, my new condo, or the sleek black Audi R8 I bought myself as a reward. "You've earned every bit of this," she'd say proudly, her eyes shining whenever I shared my achievements. Meanwhile, Nate and Cassie's social media feeds were like endless reels of mediocrity. "I can't believe they're still doing this," I muttered, scrolling through their profiles. Nate posed next to his used BMW 3 Series with captions like, "Exec life, blessed luxury." Cassie posted photos from designer stores, tagging brands she clearly couldn't afford without Mom and Victor's credit cards. One post made me laugh out loud. Nate, standing by his car at some local business event, captioned, "When hard work pays off, success, entrepreneur, real estate." I read it while sitting in my Audi R8, its engine purring like a content cat. The car was worth more than his annual salary at Victor's company. The leather seats still smelled new, and the dashboard gleamed in the sunlight. But I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. My success spoke for itself, and no social media filter could capture that. Then came the message that changed everything. It popped up in my Instagram DMs on a Tuesday morning. The notification sound made my heart skip a beat. "Alexandra, this is your mother. Mother's Day is in a month. I'm hosting a small family gathering at home. I expect you to come and bring something appropriate. Sunday, 10 a.m. Don't embarrass me by showing up empty-handed. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold as I reread the message several times. 3 years of almost no contact, and this was how she chose to reach out. No, "How are you?" No attempt to reconnect, just a demand to show up at our gathering with a hint at an expensive gift. I nearly deleted the message, but something stopped me. My finger hovered over the screen. Maybe it was curiosity or a desire to see what would happen when our worlds collided. I called Diana and requested a few days off, then booked a flight to my hometown. That evening, over tea in Grandma's cozy kitchen, filled with the scent of freshly baked cookies, she asked the question I'd been pondering myself. "What are you going to give her, sweetheart?" I smiled, pulling out my phone to show her a photo. It was a lakefront property I'd recently acquired through a foreclosure deal. 3 bedrooms, a private dock, panoramic views, valued at about $450,000. Grandma's eyes widened, her cup freezing halfway to her lips. "Alex, that's too much. She doesn't deserve it after how she's treated you." "Oh, I know she doesn't." I laughed, sipping my tea and feeling warmth spread through my chest. But can you imagine her face when she realizes what she's missed all these years? The daughter she pushed away turned out to be more successful than she could have ever imagined. I want to see her expression when she realizes how wrong she was. "You're a bit devious," Grandma chuckled, shaking her head, her eyes sparkling. "I must say, I'm curious to see it myself." "You've got this," I whispered to myself as I pulled up to Mom's suburban house on the morning of her gathering. I wore a tailored Armani suit, simple but cut in a way that spoke of wealth without screaming it. Its price could have covered 10 of the flashy outfits I later noticed. I deliberately chose a rented sedan over my Audi from the agency, amused by how it would play into their assumptions about my life. In my hands, I carried an exquisite bouquet of rare orchids and peonies, arranged by a florist who catered to celebrities. The flowers were wrapped in rustling paper, and my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips as I walked up the familiar path. The house was exactly as I expected, superficially updated, with features that impress people who've never seen truly high-end homes. Granite countertops but cheap cabinets underneath. I'd shown properties that made this house look like a college dorm. Mom greeted me at the door. Her gaze barely flicked over me before her lips curled slightly. "Oh, Alexandra, you actually came. You could have dressed better for the occasion," she said, eyeing my understated designer outfit with disapproval. The living room was already full when I walked in. Mom sat in her favorite chair, wearing a glittery sequined blouse that sparkled under the recessed lighting. Victor was beside her, with Nate and Cassie flanking them like royal heirs. The rest of the seats were filled with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Linda, who used to pinch my cheeks too hard, Cousin Rachel, always bragging about her kids' successes, and other vaguely familiar faces from my past. I took a seat at the far end of the room, watching the spectacle unfold. Aunt Linda gave Mom a set of scented candles. "They're from an exclusive boutique at the mall," she announced proudly, her voice carrying across the room. Mom gushed as if they were diamonds. "Oh, Linda, you know exactly what I love." Rachel presented a gift card for a day at a local spa. More enthusiastic exclamations from Mom. The gifts kept coming. A cookbook, a decorative vase, a basket of bath products. Mom accepted each one as if it were a priceless treasure, emphasizing how thoughtful and perfect they were. Her eyes lit up with every package. Then came Nate and Cassie's moment. They stood together, grinning like they'd just hit the jackpot. "Mom," Nate said, and it still felt wrong to hear him call her that. "Cassie and I pooled our money and got you something special." Cassie pulled out her phone and showed a photo. "It's a 65-inch smart TV. We already had it delivered and set up in your living room." Mom burst into tears, pulling them both into a tight hug. Her jewelry jingled. My wonderful, generous children, I can't believe you did this. You must have been saving for months. Finally, all eyes turned to me. I leaned forward and offered my bouquet. Mom's expression darkened instantly. "What is this?" she asked, not even reaching for the flowers. "These are specially ordered orchids," I offered quietly. "There's something special inside," I added, but she didn't look. Instead, her face flushed with anger, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the armrest. "I knew it! You really are a useless girl," she snapped, laughing. "Showing up here in that plain outfit, probably the only decent thing you own. Driving some ordinary rented car because you can't afford anything better, and now you're giving me flowers. What am I supposed to do with them? They'll wilt in 3 days." She tossed the bouquet back at me. It landed on the coffee table, petals scattering across the surface. Nate and Cassie giggled, covering their mouths with their hands. Some guests looked uncomfortable, while others seemed to enjoy the drama. Victor just kept scrolling on his phone as if nothing was happening. I calmly picked up the bouquet, carefully gathering the scattered petals. The room fell silent. Everyone was waiting to see what I'd do next. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let them see my unease. "You know what's funny, Mom?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "Hidden in these flowers is a deed to a lakefront house. 3 bedrooms, a private dock, panoramic views, worth about $450,000. Her face went pale. Cassie dropped her champagne glass, the shatter deafening in the sudden silence. That's impossible," Mom stammered, her perfect makeup unable to hide her shock. "You can't afford that." "You're obviously lying." I couldn't hold back a laugh, the sound cutting through the tension. "You'd know if I could afford it if you'd bothered to care about my life these past few years. But let me enlighten you. I'm a partner at Westbrook Luxury Real Estate. I fully own my condo in the city. And that rented car you laughed at? I chose it because I didn't want to leave my Audi R8 parked overnight in this neighborhood." Nate's mouth fell open, his carefully curated image of success crumbling before everyone's eyes. Cassie stopped giggling, her fingers nervously fidgeting with her fake designer bracelet. "But since you're so sure I'm a failure," I continued, tucking the small envelope back into the bouquet, "you clearly don't want anything from me. I wouldn't want to ruin your Mother's Day. Enjoy the TV. I hear its resolution is almost as good as my home theater system." I walked out with my head held high, the soft click of the front door closing feeling like the end of a long, painful sentence. I drove straight to Grandma's, the weight on my shoulders lifting with every mile. She was waiting for me, 2 steaming cups of tea already on the coffee table, the air filled with the familiar scent of caramel. I told her everything, my voice trembling at times. "Some people never change," she sighed, shaking her head, the lamplight reflecting off her silver hair. "Your mom always cared more about appearances than reality. Even as a child, she was more concerned with how things looked than how they felt." We were still talking when the phone rang. An unfamiliar number, but a gut feeling told me who it was. "Alexandra, darling." Mom's voice dripped with honey, a stark contrast to her earlier tone that made me cringe. I don't know where she got my number. I've been thinking about what happened today. "Honestly," I replied coldly, my fingers tightening around the phone. "Yes, and I realized I may have been too hasty. If you're still willing to give me that deed to the house, I'd be happy to accept it. It could be a fresh start. I want to be part of your life again. We're family." "No," I said, finally understanding something that had eluded me for years. "We're not family. We're just people who share DNA, and you don't want to reconnect. You just want that lake house." I hung up, my hand trembling slightly, but my resolve firm. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing after I left town. Mom called from different numbers, her cell, the house line, even Victor's phone. When she realized I wouldn't answer, the messages started. Each notification twisted my stomach.
Alex, please call me back. We need to discuss the house situation. I've been thinking about what you said about your career. Maybe you could help Nate get started in real estate? He's great with people. Cassie says she'd love to intern at a firm like yours. It'd look great on her resume. The house needs repairs, and since you're doing so well... Each message was more transparent than the last. No apologies, no acknowledgement of the past, just an endless stream of requests and hints at my money. The desperation in her words sent chills down my spine. It was like watching a starving predator circle its prey. Only Mom hadn't lost food. She'd lost a relationship with her daughter. I read the messages with cold detachment, as if analyzing a client's real estate portfolio. Her tactics were almost impressive, guilt-tripping. I'm your mother, how can you ignore me after all I've done? Flattery. You've become such a successful businesswoman. Manipulation. Family should help family in tough times. And even threats. I'll tell everyone in the industry how you abandoned your poor mother. Your mom has been calling me nonstop, Grandma said over the phone a week after I returned home. She showed up at my garden gate today, can you believe it? Demanding I give her your address and details about the lake house. What did you tell her? I asked, though the warmth in my chest already hinted at the answer. I told her to get off my property before I called the police, she chuckled, her voice strong despite her age. You should have seen her face turn as red as my tomatoes. She kept insisting she had a right to know where her daughter lives and what properties you own. I reminded her she lost that right years ago when she chose Victor's kids over you. I could picture Mom standing at Grandma's garden gate, probably in one of her fake designer outfits, trying to intimidate her into getting what she wanted. It was the same pattern I'd seen my whole life, pure selfishness disguised as familial concern. She didn't take it well, Grandma continued. She started yelling about how ungrateful we both are, how she sacrificed everything for you. Mrs. Henderson next door was watering her roses and heard everything. When Mom finally realized I wasn't budging, she stormed back to her car, nearly crashing into Mr. Peterson's mailbox. Well, Alex, be careful. There was desperation in her eyes. I've already blocked her everywhere, I assured Grandma. Social media, phone, email, everything. And security at my office has her photo at the front desk in case she shows up. After the call, I walked through my condo, running my fingers over the cool marble countertops, taking in everything I'd built. The furniture I'd carefully chosen, the original artwork on the walls, the panoramic view of the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, all earned through my hard work and determination. I thought about Mom's messages, her sudden interest in my life once she learned about my valuable assets. In the end, it was almost funny, though sad. She'd thrown away a relationship with her daughter for the appearance of a perfect family with Victor and his kids, and now she was desperately trying to claw her way back into my life for the appearance of success and access to my real estate. But she taught me one valuable lesson. Family isn't about DNA or marriage certificates. It's about love, support, and being there through the good and the bad. That's what I have with Grandma and Liv. The next morning, I called my lawyer and transferred the deed to the lake house into a trust for myself and Grandma. When I told her, she tried to refuse, tears shining in her eyes. You deserve this more than she ever did, I said. You've been more of a mother to me than she ever was. She hugged me tightly, her embrace warm and steady, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged, not in a house of pretense, but in a real home, built on love.